Today, we're diving into a story that's all about a clash of titans. We're talking two brilliant minds, two incredibly powerful nations getting together to design the entire world's financial future. This is the story of Bretton Woods. Okay, so let's get right to it. You're probably thinking, a conference from 1944? Why should I care? Well, the answer is, it has pretty much everything to do with you. The rules they wrote back then are still echoing through the global economy. And yeah, they absolutely influence the value of the money that's in your pocket right now. In fact, think back to 2008, when the entire world economy was on the brink of collapse. Where did world leaders look for answers? They looked right back here, to Bretton Woods, trying to figure out how to build a more stable system. All of a sudden, its lessons felt more urgent than ever. Now, to really get why this meeting was so important, we have to rewind. You have to picture a world that's just in total chaos, still smoldering from war and a devastating economic depression.
I mean, we're talking about a moment of complete and total breakdown. The old way of doing things, the gold standard, it had just completely failed. That led to economic collapse, which then fanned the flames of political tension that helped spark World War II. The world's leaders knew, they just knew, they could not let that happen again.
So the goal they set for themselves, wow, it was incredibly ambitious. This wasn't just about money or balancing the books, it was about peace. The big idea was to create a system with managed markets and new, powerful institutions like the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, that could stop economic disasters before they started and hopefully prevent another war. And right at the heart of this huge project were two men, two absolute intellectual giants with completely different ideas about what this new world should look like. This is where it gets good. So on one side, you've got John Maynard Keynes from the UK. He's a global intellectual superstar, basically a rock star economist. But he's representing the British Empire, which is in decline. And on the other side, you've got Harry Dexter White from the US, a super powerful but way less famous bureaucrat. And he's representing a nation that's about to become the world superpower. Their visions? Totally at odds. Keynes, the man was a genius, no question, but he was fighting a serious uphill battle. His country was flat broke. His personality was maybe a little too blunt for diplomacy. And critically, he just completely misread the Americans. He was kind of hoping for some generosity that, just wasn't on the table. Now, White, on the other hand, was just as brilliant. But people called him abrasive. He wasn't there to make friends. He had one single, crystal-clear focus: build a new system that would secure and project American economic power for decades to come. Period. And this, right here, brings us to the main event. Because this wasn't just some academic debate over economic theory. No. This was a raw contest between a beautiful, brilliant idea and the brute force of geopolitical reality. The debates were fascinating for sure, but at the end of the day, it wasn't about who had the cleverest argument. The outcome was really decided by one simple, unavoidable fact: pure economic power. You just couldn't ignore the power imbalance. It was stark. The United States was basically sitting on a mountain of the world's gold. Meanwhile, Great Britain was effectively bankrupt and owed America a ton of money. It's like showing up to a poker game where one player has all the chips. That one fact shaped every single conversation. And so, in a contest like that, there was only ever going to be one winner, right? The world that came out of Bretton Woods was the world that Harry Dexter White had planned all along. The logic of how it all played out was just ruthlessly simple. White played his ultimate trump card, America's economic dominance. Keynes's really elegant plan for a totally new, neutral global currency, it just didn't stand a chance against Britain's financial weakness. And the result? A new world order built entirely around the US dollar. But hold on, because here's where the story of the man who built this whole system gets a fascinating twist. Turns out, White had this secret admiration for the Soviet Union's state-controlled economy, and he was associating with people who had ties to Soviet intelligence. Now, this didn't really shape the outcome at Bretton Woods, but it would definitely come back to haunt him. Because of these controversial ties, White, the guy who was the chief architect of the IMF, was blocked from becoming its very first leader. Talk about irony. And this set a precedent that, believe it or not, still stands today. The top job at the IMF has always gone to a European, never an American. So what happened to this grand system? Well, it did shape the post-war world for decades, but those core conflicts that were baked into it from the very beginning, they were never really resolved. You can see the whole story right here. The system that was born in 44, it gave us decades of stability. But then it collapsed in 1971 when the US just couldn't back the dollar with gold anymore. Yet, as that 2008 crisis proved, its ghost is still with us. That central tension, that tug of war between what's good for the whole world and what's good for one really powerful nation, that's still the defining conflict in global economics today. So, if there's one big thing to take away, it's this. Bretton Woods was both a massive success and a ticking time bomb. It created the framework for decades of prosperity, for sure. But it was built on a shaky foundation of unequal power, a tension that is still causing friction all over our globalized world. And, that leaves us with a huge question for our time. As we face all these new challenges, from climate change to digital currencies, rising geopolitical tensions, could we, or maybe more importantly, should we, even try to create a new Bretton Woods for the 21st century? That is the unresolved legacy we are all living with right now.